Hello and welcome back to This Week in Science, the show that combines chemistry with comedy. I don't like it either. In this week's episode, we have got fines for littering in space, new scientific breakthroughs using AI, and a girl that is allergic to water. Let's get into it. So the US has issued their first ever fine for littering in space over space junk. This is the real world equivalent of someone dumping rubbish outside of your house, and I am all for it. I mean, we don't want to get to a point where space travel involves weaving through abandoned mattresses and abandoned dryers from 1996. However, as Brian Cox always says, the universe, it's always expanding. The universe is always expanding. So if there's an infinite amount of space in the universe, then surely there is an infinite amount of space to dump our stuff. In this article, the Dish Network will find $150,000 for not moving an old satellite. And it says that space junk is made up of bits of tech just floating around the Earth's orbit. I mean, just imagine looking up the sky one day and just seeing a fleet of iPhone 4s floating above you. It is estimated that over 10,000 satellites have been launched and currently orbit the Earth, and of those, over a half are now out of use. I mean, how do you even get a satellite back when it's in orbit? Brain power in over 50s dropped during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
It's a shame that we didn't follow the cognitive prowess of our great leaders at the time, Donald Trump and Boris Johnson. It's an interesting one though, because it's thought that people who already had mild cognitive impairment, so some form of memory problem already, were the people who declined the most during this time. And they think it's because of a number of reasons: social isolation, alcohol, stress, so many things going on in that time. Boris Johnson, interestingly, the guy that during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was reported this week that he asked if a hairdryer could kill COVID. Yes, the guy asked if a hairdryer in the nose could kill COVID. And the way he asked it was my favorite ever, because he sent it round a viral video on WhatsApp of a guy who's using a hairdryer in his nose. It's like these little Indian aunties that are spreading rumors around WhatsApp. They're sending videos to each other like, "Beta, did you know that this turmeric can cure your eye problems? It will fix it completely." Except instead of a family WhatsApp group, it's just the UK's top leaders. In AI news this week, it was seen that AI can be used to grade the severity of certain types of cancers, so certain types of sarcomas. The AI was 82% accurate compared to 44% lab analysis. Now in this story, they developed an AI model that looked at scans of 170 patients and using certain markers was able to predict better than the lab the grades of the cancers, so the aggressiveness of these cancers. Now the reason that this is such a big breakthrough is that when you have a scan that says, oh, this could be cancer, normally you'd then go on to have a biopsy. Biopsy is where they need to take a sample of it and then look at those cells to say, yes, this is the kind of cancer it is, and this is the grade of the cancer. And sometimes cancers are at sites where it would be impossible to biopsy it because the risk is too high. So instead of that, if you could have a scan and an AI model that would be able to tell you the grade, well, that's a win-win. It's kind of like having a jar of jam and being able to look inside and say, yes, that's strawberry jam, instead of having to stick your finger in, pull it out, taste it and say, yes, that's strawberry jam. Oh, and also I may have nicked an artery. AI is a broad term, but always makes me think of ChatGPT. I mean, if ChatGPT was sentient, it would be so confused by people asking it all of these sorts of questions. The first guy asking it to grade a cancer, the next guy asking what came first, the chicken or the egg, and the third guy just completely insulting it for no reason whatsoever. In Cambridge this week, they used AI to map out the target for thermal ablation for these small tumours. So normally what they would do is that you would use the scans, they would by eye sort of map out where they think would be the best target, and then they would give you the treatment or the therapy. Whereas now they can make that prediction using AI. Thermal ablation is a type of targeted cancer treatment that is much less invasive. The AI was given a ton of data and it was able to predict, well, this is the tumor tissue, and this is the healthy surrounding tissue. We are being warned though from the creators of ChatGPT of AI's superhuman persuasion, basically meaning that sometimes it will come out with incorrect answers, but give you such a persuasive explanation as to why that is the answer that you just believe it. It's like those people, we all know those people who speak in a certain way where no matter what they say, just because they've said it in a certain way, you're like, yeah, I 100% believe that. An inquiry into the COVID pandemic in the UK is coming to the conclusion that it was a terrible mistake to open pubs and to not open schools. It seems like you probably didn't need an inquiry to come to that conclusion. The article says we had eat out to help out instead of schools opening, which is amazing because if you're not from the UK and you don't know what this is, basically when the lockdown started easing up, we had this initiative in the UK called Eat Out to Help Out, where you could go to most restaurants and you could have 2-for-1 meals. So you could get a meal, your friend could get a meal, and you'd only pay for one. And the government was paying for the other meal, so they were subsidizing it. The reason that we're doing that is to stimulate the economy, to get people not afraid to go out again. And I ate a lot of meals. I really helped out the economy. And as a consequence, a lot of people were mingling again and COVID numbers skyrocketed. It was a tasty time though. There's currently a worldwide shortage of ADHD medications, and this is mainly for two reasons. Number one, the demand for these medications has gone up. There's a lot more diagnosis, a lot more people being prescribed medications. And number two is that there's an issue with the manufacturing. Now, this is a contentious issue because there are people with genuine ADHD who without these medications are going to really struggle. But there are also people, a lot of people now, who have symptoms that may be similar to ADHD or traits of ADHD who are being diagnosed with it and prescribed a medication. And this can happen with private companies who are being paid for an assessment as an expectation to get a diagnosis after that. And this was seen in a recent Panorama investigation as well, where someone came with symptoms that were not ADHD and they got a diagnosis. It is a slippery slope to get right because the symptoms are so subjective. NHS trusts in the UK are being accused of using foreign doctors as cheap labour. They took our jobs!
They took our jobs!
This is unfortunately the dire situation of the staffing crisis in the UK, where we need healthcare professionals from abroad to come and help fill these rotas so that we have proper staff. This happened to me as a locum doctor 3 or 4 years ago. So I was working as a temporary doctor somewhere and I was literally training someone who just come from abroad, never worked in the NHS before, to take my role. So I was literally giving them the instructions about how to do the job I was doing so that in a few weeks' time, when they felt competent, they could then take it over, which was fine because I was a temporary worker. And actually the quality of their work was good. I mean, they've been through medical training and they have the medical knowledge. I feel like the bit that maybe there's a bit of a disjoint or sometimes where it becomes a bit difficult is with the communication. I think there's a lot of intricacies in language, and when English is not your first language, it can be then more difficult to understand some of those intricacies in the language to be able to explain things to people. The article says the doctors were from countries including Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. They're also using the NHS, the foreign doctors, to work in these lesser desirable clinical fellow roles where there's not as much progression as there is in some other roles and where the pay is more stagnant. However, consider this. If it's the choice between having a doctor that was not trained in the UK and not having a doctor at all because there are not enough, which one are you going to choose? Tai Chi may slow the progression of Parkinson's disease symptoms in people who already have a diagnosis, according to this new study this week. Unfortunately, you will still look like a silly goose while doing it. Medicine cannot fix that. In the UK, patients on NHS waiting lists are being given the option to travel to other parts of the country for treatment if there are shorter waiting times. However, there's no shortlist that could convince me to be seen in Blackpool. To be eligible for this, you need to have been on a waiting list for 40 weeks and not have an appointment in the next 8 weeks. So basically, to be eligible, you have to have been waiting for a year already. That is how long these lists are getting. Botox and lip fillers are banned in the UK for under 18s and have been for a few years. So the loophole is that people are crossing the border to get their forehead fix in Wales. Forehead fix. That's a good one. The internet has created these unrealistic beauty standards with people trying to have these treatments. They say that Botox makes you look 10 years younger. Why does a 16-year-old need to look 6 years old? Turkey's health tourism is booming, or should I say gleaming. Health tourists are flocking to Turkey to get their fix of cheaper surgeries and options where there are really long waiting lists or options not available in the NHS in the UK. Now, one of the most popular treatments is bariatric surgery. In the UK, this is available for specific people over a certain BMI, whereas in Turkey, if you pay, you play, and by play, I mean have a gastric sleeve. Gastric sleeve is a type of bariatric surgery where the surgeon will literally cut out a large portion of the stomach. And I'm going to show you some images because a lot of people don't understand what is actually happening. Here is the esophagus, here is the stomach, and here is this large portion that they are taking out. that is a lot of stomach to remove. So you eat food, you're satiated earlier, less calories in because you're eating less, hence you're losing weight. The main issue is what happens when you get complications from a surgery abroad. You come back into the UK, you're plugged into the system, you turn up into A&E, having had a surgery abroad, and now you've got an abscess. Who's that responsibility of? The hole in the ozone layer is smaller than predicted, says NASA. I can't be the only one who didn't know the hole in the ozone layer was still a thing. The ozone layer is this layer around the Earth that protects the Earth from harmful UV rays. And I know that a few years ago there was a hole in the ozone layer, sort of around Antarctica. Why don't we just lasso all of these decommissioned satellites to plug the hole? And finally, the most interesting story, this California woman is allergic to water with a condition called aquagenic urticaria. Urticaria being that rash you get when you have nettle stings, that allergic rash. Aquagenic means really does not like water. The sad thing is the stock photo they used in the article is someone literally washing their hands, mocking something that she cannot do. So the story goes that she was frequently breaking out in hives and these rashes, and they thought originally it may be soaps or shampoos because they are the most common culprit. If you're getting hives, you're getting rashes, we generally think, what new products are you using? But they just continued, and it was happening when she was in the shower, it was happening when she got out of pools, then she started getting blistering and ulcers in the mouth and reactions in the mouth. In the article she says she's allergic to all sources of water. This includes rain, tap, distilled, ocean, bottled. This even includes bodily fluids like sweat, tears and saliva. That, I'm sorry, is literally everything. That is everything. That's all kinds of water. And also that's your own water, so your sweat, and your tears, so you can't cry, you can't exercise in sweat, you can't drink water. That is a really difficult position to be in. She lives off mainly dairy milk because apparently the high protein and fat content mean that she's able to tolerate it and only eats dry foods. And on that dry note, we will end the video. My name is Kieran, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.